Hey everybody, this is Sheets, and I'm going to be riding solo today for the Survivor pool analysis. Unfortunately, me myself, I busted last week, and it's a little annoying because we got exactly what we wanted with respect to the leverage. We faded the two most popular picks, that being the Chargers and the Vikings, and we went with the Giants and the Bears. And they actually came in even lower own than I expected, especially the Bears, but they just both came up empty, and that's just kind of the way it goes. So if you did pick the chalkier teams that were, they were decent plays, but just too chalky, and their EVs were just lower for me, I just would never have played them, then you're still in. I unfortunately am not. Played Kansas City. That was probably a pretty poor play. Baltimore was a pretty poor play. But if you're part of the group of people that play the Chargers and the Vikings, that's good. What's also sort of annoying is that this was kind of the last hurdle I thought I really had to go through before the rest of the season really just played out very, very nicely. So what I'm going to do is I am going to do this podcast or whatever today, just kind of going through what I think some paths are that you can play if you've been following, my selections, and maybe you went with the Vikings because that was the last decision we really had to make, was whether to go the Vikings as opposed to the Bears. The EV was pretty much the same for both of them. Unfortunately, I had used Minnesota in one of the pools, and the other pool it didn't really make sense. So if you did have Minnesota, you probably have the same type of path that I would have had available. So we'll just kind of go through that. And I'll try to come back next week. You know what you guys can do if you really want, sign up for TrueDFS in the Discord channel, and post in there that you're alive and you want more analysis, maybe even for your own pools. I don't know if it's ethical for me to give you exact picks on your own pools, but at least we could talk about it, and it'll give me an indication that, people want me to continue to analyze this stuff. Because for me myself, I mean, I'm not particularly interested anymore, but because I'm out. But if people want me to go through this for some people, feel free to post in our True DFS Discord channel, and we will, we'll continue to keep this going for the rest of the season. But I do want to go through possible paths that, I mean, I had set up for myself that I went over at the end of last week's session. And so we're going to proceed as if, one of these teams won, like if the Bears won or something like that. So we can go through a path that you guys have, and you know, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at the Survivor Grid week 11 here, and we'll sort by EV. And we were going to play Detroit. I mean, Detroit is the top EV team, and honestly, for my path, they didn't really have too much future value. And you could play them in 13, but we had a lower owned KC available in 13 that we were probably going to play. Um, to some degree, it does depend on who you use. Like, you could have been one of those people that used Detroit against my judgment back in like week 7 or 8. I forget what that was. And then you wouldn't have Detroit to play. Then what you'd be having to do, and if you do have Detroit burned already, then you should hope that you have, Houston available, because Houston is very, very big EV, considering they've been used by almost everybody. If my DraftKings one uh, were live, I would have Houston available, but I would have Houston also available for 12, where I would probably end up using them. That's so funny. Like, Washington all of a sudden became like a lock in week 12 because of what's going on with the Cowboys. And it just goes to show you, you could project out future value, but that is very fragile. These teams have all these high expectations at the beginning of the season, and it just kind of goes in different directions. So what I would do, if you had Detroit, play them. Okay. If you did not have Detroit, hopefully, you have Washington, maybe. No, see, Washington for 12. Hopefully you could have Houston available. That would be a great play. I would not play San Francisco now because we have other plans for them. So these would be your two options. Now, if you had to go down to Miami, that's a rough one because their EV is really, really weak. I would prefer you do one of these, like Green Bay or Minnesota if you didn't play them. I don't know how you're live if you didn't play Minnesota. Actually, if you played the Chargers, you might have Minnesota available, so you could play them. I would not play Miami though. They're bad EV, and you can use them in 12 rather easily. And just to kind of go ahead and just give you like a path that would work. So if you play Detroit now, week 12, you could play Washington if you didn't use them, obviously. You could play Houston if you didn't use them, obviously. You could play Miami against New England if you didn't use them, obviously. And this whole path sort of, plays itself. Then you've hopefully have saved Kansas City. Then you just go ahead and play KC minus the 11 there. Week 14, we all saved Philadelphia. Please tell me you saved Philadelphia the way I suggested. Then you have a big hammer over everybody else in 14. In 15, it depends on whether you use Baltimore or not. If you use Baltimore, which you may have, then you don't get to use them in 15, but you might get to use San Francisco, who they're going to be a bigger favorite than 5.5 here, and they're very, very scarce. So they could be live. Arizona is probably going to be pretty popular now that they're really good. So you want to fade them anyway. So in 15, depending on whether you have Baltimore or San Francisco available, I think those would be your two options. 16, obviously, if Buffalo available, somehow you'll slam them. But if not, then you're right down the list. Green Bay, very strong play if you didn't use them. Cincinnati, if you save them like I recommended, they're going to be pretty scarce and you use them also. So there's plenty of great options. And then in 17, you could just slam Tampa. We save them in most pools. If you save the Chargers, you might have them available. So and this kind of season really plays itself out nicely if you made it here, which makes it extra tilting that it was last week that I just kind of went out, but I was never going to change anything. So what are you going to do? Except maybe play Minnesota, but that's for next year's decisions. And then 18, if you feel like playing San Francisco in 15 and saving Baltimore for 18, I mean, obviously that's the nuts. But Atlanta is a big play at 18. Everybody's gonna have them available, but at that point, probably most people have either finished their pools or chopping, so it's not gonna be that big of a deal. I guess that's pretty much all I have for this week. If I feel like I'll come back next week and go through more of this, but I encourage you to sign up for TrueDFS and especially get into that Discord channel where we talk about survivor pool stuff. The more action there is there, the more I'll be motivated to get back in there. That will do it. Hopefully you guys, anybody still in, continued good luck and keep me updated.